Welcome to another episode of Insights with Ovationz. My name is Aaron Ellis, your host. You can find out more about me at aaronellisofficial.com, as well as all my social media is Aaron Ellis Official. Today, I am joined with one of our subject matter experts on the Ovationz platform. Her name is Celia Daniels. Now, she has 25 years of success in managing, growing, and spearheading large and strategic programs in IT, healthcare, and life sciences. She's been working with Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies, and she's a trusted advisor whose expertise really spans a wide range of program management areas, including change management, strategic planning, stakeholder management, diversity, equity, inclusion. She really spans the spectrum as far as an advisor goes. So, Celia, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to chat with you, but I want to say welcome first.
Thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate the welcome and the platform that Ovation is providing for us to elevate our voices and to empower our audience who are listening to this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I love that you said that, because one of my visions and missions with Ovationz is not just about getting speakers and subject matter experts engagements. It's about really learning your vision, learning your mission, and helping co-elevate that and figuring out how can we get you out there and how can we really get your narrative out there, because it's important. From what I've learned about you, you're extremely passionate about what you do. Now, I would love to start on the personal side, just because I found a really good personal connection. I've been a musician and a songwriter since I was a little kid. And I know you're a songwriter. I actually listened to one of your songs, watched one of your videos today. So I would love to hear your personal aspects of you and your journey, and who are you, like, to the world, not just what you do business wise, but who are you?
So thank you so much for that question. I sometimes dabble with this point of, who I am or what I want to do in this world. What's my purpose? I grew up in India. I come from a small town in India, in the southern part of India. It's called Chennai. And when I was 4 years old, I remember telling my mom that I wanted to be a girl. And my mom looked at the social constructs created by the colonial British government. That was very binary, because India was always a culture where you had a spectrum of sexual orientation or gender identity, and there was so many gods and so many mythologies that you can study. It was such a very mixed complex and a very free-flowing spectrum. But unfortunately, it was all boxed into these little tiny ones. And my mom looked at me and said, "You're a boy and you're not a girl." And she explained to me, but I did not get it. I wore my mom's sari, put it around my head, and I kept running. And that's how I started my childhood, where I thought gender is fluid and I can be a girl, I can be a boy. Being a boy was a privilege in India in the early 70s. And that's how I grew up.
Mm.
And so I started growing up, and I went through a lot of issues. In I would say, when I was probably 7 years old, my mom told me, "You cannot wear your sister's clothes anymore, my cousin's sister's clothes anymore, because you're a boy." And gender hit me at that time. Till then, I thought gender is very fluid. You can be who you are, but when you realize that you're actually taken away, a part of your identity is taken away, you kind of go into this little trauma box of trauma that you have, which you don't know and you don't understand. And I started seeing the trans community in India, and it just hit me as, oh my God, they are so much discriminated. I am actually them, but I don't want to be them. I don't want to get beaten. I don't want to get messed up. I want to give I would say a trigger warning to some of you who are listening to these conversations, because some of these conversations are very difficult. When I was in my fourth grade, I was abused by my uncle, and I didn't know how to tell my parents, and I thought maybe it's my fault because I am different, and they did it to me because I am very different. 2 years later, my cousin did that to me, and I went into a very emotional state of thinking I was worthless, and there was so much of shame associated by being trans, and your identity was like messed up. It was like colors just thrown on your face. I didn't know how to come out of it. And there was a time in my ninth grade when I decided that I'm going to come out in my gender, and I want the world to know that I'm a girl. So I wore a long skirt, I put a top, and then I put a scarf around my head, and I walked outside. And this was probably a bold move in that community that I lived in. I walked outside, and here I was caught by some security guards, and they caught hold of me, and they were, making all kinds of noise. And They made me stand and they publicly humiliated me. They asked me for my dad and my mom's names so that they can go after them because of me saying that your son is such a disgrace to our community. The community where we lived was a very affluent community. And to me, I was so shocked that why would people do this to an 11-year-old child standing there and
Yeah.
just minding my own business? And there were like 15 to 20 adults who came and started yelling at me, and I thought at the time that I don't know what to do. And I spoke in another language and I ran away from that place. I came back home and I wrote the things that hit my mind. And the song probably that you heard is actually from that particular day. I came home and I tried committing suicide. I put a bag on my head and I restrained myself, and I was losing oxygen. And that's when it hit me that I'm actually going to die. And I was so afraid to die, and I was also afraid to live. One of the lyrics in my song that I wrote was "Afraid to live, afraid to die,"
Hmm.
is from that moment that I was going through. Of course, fast forward, I put in a very state of mind where I said, I'm not trans. This is not happening to me because I am attracted to girls, so I'm not trans. I had a confusion between sexual orientation and gender identity because there's no one to tell you what you're going through. But here's the thing, I was very good in I just listened to some music when I was a young child, and I was listening to a lot of artists, Karma Chameleon by Boy George, and Wham, and Police is my favorite. I love Sting. Sting is my favorite artist, even today, and so many other artists. I was listening to a lot of them, and I used to start. I took the guitar and I started playing. I started playing lead, and then I slowly went into chords. I asked my brother how to play, and he's a guitarist, and he taught me. And I started singing at the time, and I wrote my first song from a tune that I adopted from Europe. You probably know the Final Countdown from Europe song. I
Yeah.
had taken one of their songs and then I wrote into my emotions. I was just pouring into those emotions. And music was like a refuge to me. And beach and music was a refuge to me. I used to go to the beach and sit down and just think, what am I
Speaking my
doing
language. Speaking my language completely. Those are my two refuges: the beach and the
here?
language.
Yeah, and so that's how my childhood was, and I can go a little bit into my adulthood in terms of my marriage and others, but I think I'll pause that question till now because I think this is such an important part of my childhood experience was taken away, and I lived in trauma all the time. My brain went to a freeze where I just said, I am not going to be a trans person. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to be good in what I do. I did my master's in computer science. I did and I started working for a human genome project in a research institute. It's called
Mhm.
Indian Institute of Science. And I was so good in what I did. I was good in programming. I literally wrote another, operating system, if you will. I wrote a Unix operating system on a VAX VMware system. I'm that kind of geek. I was so good in what I did. And but there was always this question inside of me that kept asking me, who are you really? Are you really who you are? Are you pretending to the world? And every day I felt like I was pretending to the world because I didn't want to show my femininity. And
Mhm.
showing your femininity is a weakness of your traits. And to me, that was the way I kind of went through it. But I'll just pause here because there's so much to uncover in these conversations, even
Yeah.
in this childhood.
Yeah, and just because of time, like, I'm sure you and I could go down a rabbit hole for a couple hours here, honestly.
Hmm.
But just because of time, what I'm hearing, and I really look at things based on essence and imagery, meaning I look at what is the actual energetic things I'm hearing, right? So we can say how those energetic you explained how they express themselves, but I'm hearing someone who wasn't necessarily accepted for who they were, wasn't necessarily didn't really understand how to define themselves, meaning was challenged by the traditional definitions that didn't necessarily match up, right? And that I see that across the board. It's not just necessarily in the transgender community, but I see that everywhere. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to go to college and do this. I'm supposed to think
Hmm.
this way. You know what I mean? So I think that really spans. But what I'm seeing is an experience of that, right? But and I like the word and rather than but and from what I've read about you, I've seen you bridge that into empowering people now. And I'd love to bridge the conversation just for time on how you're doing that now, especially in organizations and I pulled out a couple things that jumped out at me. One of the things that you said, I'd like to separate this out and have you speak towards both these subjects, but first one is employee empowerment. And what do you mean when you say employee empowerment? How does that play out in the work that you do?
When I was working in one of the consulting firms, I was doing consulting. I had a team of managers reporting to me, and I was always thinking about why are women not in this workforce, in this kind of business. And I was selling life sciences business across the western slope, I would say California and also the Midwest. And when I was running these organizations and I was interacting with my clients, and I would give them business solutions for an IT issue or a business issue that they were going through, I didn't see too many women in those spaces. And I was thinking, what? And I had one woman out of seven men who were reporting to me, and she had this little, I would say, low self-esteem about herself because of her accent and because she's a South Indian, or she's a North Indian, but she's an Asian Indian woman. And she said, women like me, our voices are not going to be heard. And I felt in my heart, deep inside my heart, that there are people issues that I'm dealing with here right now, because there's one person who came to me and said, my wife is going through cancer and I don't know how to manage this. I'm having a really hard time. I saw a lot of people issues. Another person was actually, he had an accident. He lost his wife, his mother, and his daughter in the same one accident.
Wow.
I've never been to a funeral where I saw three bodies in a coffin, and my heart just broke. And he was in a wheelchair because of this accident he had. I saw the humanness of what was going on in the workplace. It's not about being trans or Asian or immigrant. The issues were very human to me. And I said, how can I help another human being as one human being? I'm a boss, but I have a privilege as a boss. And at that time, I had not come out, and I used all my resources, the HR and all the resources that I had within the organization to pull in and do these things. And the HR said, "Oh, we don't get involved in this." And to me, it was like, "Oh, wait a minute, you're not going to get involved in this because of this is a very personal issue, or it's a human issue." They said in the HR, we normally don't take care of, some issues with cancer and some issues with accidents and all that. So I said, okay, I'm going to put it in my account budget and I'm going to do it. And I started doing it. I put that in my P&L because I have to manage a P&L where you manage the profit and loss for your account, and and then I had a few allies within the organization who were compassionate for the human side of things. And that's really one of the ways in which my mind started focusing on is a human to human. When I'm a boss, I'm your boss. When I'm outside, I'm your friend. I am just another person that I want you to connect with. But when we are at work, we got to focus on work, but we also bring our humanness into the workplace. And that changed a lot. Now, this lady that I'm talking about, she's actually a senior director, and she's running a huge practice for application maintenance. And she's now a guru in the same company. I even moved out of that company 10 years back, but she's still there and she's still in touch with me. And she keeps telling me every time that you empowered me. Now, to me, that's a story. Someone whom I worked with 10 years back still comes and tells me the same thing, that you empowered me. You were next to me. You saw me. You understood my situation. In these days, when I see the workforce, they treat people like commodity. They treat your employees like a commodity. They want you to come, get the job done, and get out. And don't talk about your personal stuff. Don't bring your horrible. There's a lot of language there, but don't bring your personal shit into these conversations. That's your thing. You manage it. To me, it is like, this is who I am. I am not just a professional. Yes, I am a project manager. I'm certified. I'm Scrum certified. I can run things. I'm a business architect. I'm a solution. I can give you business solutions, but I'm also a human being. I have a family. I go through these things, and that's what is missing in the organizations. And they say, break it down. DEI is about humanizing and about integrating. It's about building a framework where people feel empowered to empower each other. I think that is what people are missing. It's not about one group of people just empowering and getting empowered, but empowering my wife to be an ally to me. It took 17 years. It wasn't easy. Empowering my daughter, who's, when she was 12 years old, to tell that, hey, sweetheart, dad is trans. And to me, that was so hard coming out to her when she was 12 years old. But now she's 24. She works for the state of California. She proudly advocates for people like me right in Sacramento. And
Mhm.
that's where I think I found empowerment in my own little circle, in my own ecosystem. And I took it to the broader ways of coming out. And also in the, when I came out at work, I was discriminated. I can go a little bit on that, on tangent into the explanation on that, but I want to pause here because I want to go back into this question that you asked me. Empowerment is a human thing,
Mhm.
and I believe that we always have to not include people but integrate. To me, I in the DEI is more about integration.
Mm.
You can invite me to a party and say, Celia, come home. We are having a party. And then you say, hey, Celia, by the way, don't keep the glass on the. I have a coaster there. And by the way, if you want to use the restroom, there's a restroom downstairs in the basement. You can use it. This is for the guests. And, that is not, that's including but not integrating. A lot of companies today are like that. And that's what I am here to change, really make the change from the bathroom all the way to the boardroom. I want to see women in that workforce, all the way from the bathroom to the boardroom, like trans women to all intersectional identities of women being part of the workforce. And to me, that matters because we need to build an allyship. This podcast, it's an allyship. You learning from me and I'm learning from you. It's not about a one-way thing. It's not about who Celia is, but also learning about what you do. Why are you doing this? That's where for me it's the power of allyship. It lies there.
So I want to pull out a nugget out of that because I think it was extremely powerful. We talked about personal and professional, and
Mhm.
like we talked about beforehand that we both don't believe that they're separate. Like, and I think people are coming around to the fact that they're not separate from what it was even a decade or 2 decades ago. Yet you really even broke it down in a way that I haven't heard before. But it was so simple that regardless of what the problem is or the personal issue or what it was, and you named a handful of them, it's a human issue. Period. It talks about what I was talking about, the essence and the imagery. It brings it all down to where we are all the same in that sense. How the expression is coming out externally might be different, but internally we're battling the same issues. And that, I think that was extremely powerful how you said that. Now, let's bridge this into something else that I was having a conversation around this topic. I was having a conversation not only around what DEI has been, but what DEI is moving towards, in the sense that there's a lot of neurodivergent people in the workforce that haven't been recognized or they've tried to box them in, and if they're not meeting certain criteria, the box are getting checked that they're not doing their work right. It's just that they work a little bit differently. But one of the ways that kind of came to me, I'd love you to speak towards, is how can we prepare companies for what's happening now? Because I think we're going through, honestly, a generational shift. We're shifting from, I guess I'm Generation X. I don't know. I've never really fully understood the different ones, right? But we're shifting into a whole new way of looking at things that's different around gender identity, different around expressions, different kind of prejudices that we as a different generation might not see, right? But how can we empower companies and the leaders of those companies to create like braver and more inclusive workplaces on all those areas?
I believe this is a question that I've always been dabbling with. I'm now dabbling with now, not in the past. The reason is I think the inclusion has actually caused a lot of exclusion in so many spaces.
Nice. I agree. Yes.
The reason I say that is because when I feel like I want to be included, they welcome me. Like I talked about the integration and the sense of belonging is lost in the company. DEI became more like a metrics. It became a compliance part of it. It's like you need to have a black CDO, which is a chief diversity officer, and the companies believe that my chief diversity officer is black, she's Asian. I have a vice president who is now in the board, and she is. She's a woman, and we never had women in the board. And they have these conversations, but what I'm seeing right now is people are checking boxes, and which is probably, if your company is not into that culture of creating a change, you're going to be a performative company. You're never going to be a transformative company. Companies need to really work on some of the transformative things within their framework that can really change, because 70% or 75% of the workforce in 2030 are going to be millennials. I'm a Gen X as well. So we are in this together. My daughter's a Gen Z, and I have seen the way the younger generation are thinking. They don't really care about who you are. They're like, you know what, you're another human being, because the races are so much mixed here. My daughter was born and raised here, and all her friends were Jewish. And she had Latinx kids and Caucasian kids. And she then said, I want to go back to I'm actually brown, and I want to really amplify that part of my identity. And she's now so proud of who she is. And at the same time, she also respects people from other cultures, other ethnicities and backgrounds. And for them, it's like humanizing it, not demonizing it, not politicizing it. And she is at a point in her life where she says that I want to look at another human being as a human being at the same time, but also understand the issues that race or that culture or the gender has caused, and the systemic issues that has caused, and how do we take those and change it in the future, so we don't have these, we learn from these mistakes rather than history repeating itself.
Right.
When one of the things I'll tell you, this really helped me, is the organizations really need to getting out of the business value to the human value. Whenever I spoke in organizations, they bring me in because I can actually tell them how DEI can bring business value. I can do that. And I've done that for all the pharmaceutical companies. I've done that for the healthcare organizations. I've said how internally and externally you can influence the market, your consumers, and also your employees in that same field. How do you really build that? And I put some business models that really baffled companies that we never thought about it this way. It's very easy. And I tell them that you are looking at a business value, but look at the human value. And when people say that they want to be included, it's not that we are trying to give them a quota here. Even before I came out, I was managing 250 million was my P&L. In one of the companies that I was working as a consultant, I had to raise that amount of business. And imagine I was a senior director, and I was also running a life sciences practice for some of my clients here. One of the things that hit me was when I came out, I was doing all this and no one ever questioned me. But when I came out, my gender became an issue, my neurodivergent things became an issue, my cardiovascular things became an issue, my age became an issue. There are things that I started, which I never understood, now started amplifying itself because people can pick on this. And there is a bias, which is unconscious, and a bias that's conscious bias. And I started talking about it. And that's why one thing that I do is the way we can change it is we need to empower companies to empower people.
Yeah.
And also make sure, and that's the way we can do it, and by building allyships. I want to be in the veterans group. I want to sit in the LGBTQ group, which I of course do. And I want to also sit with my friends who are Black. I want to go to these different ERG groups in the company and start understanding and building that allyship. And we need to build allyship with each other. This is an interesting analogy that I've taken, and I've also recommended to some of the CEOs. When you take your ERG groups within your company, probably that's more than 10% of your entire workforce. And if you start building allyship within your ERG groups, you can literally change some of the policies in your company. You can bring in a lot more changes in terms of including folks and where they feel like they're excluded. There are ways in which you can work as an ally and as a team. And the important analogy, since I'm from South California, I always picture people standing and holding hands on a beach. And when the waves come and hit, we are holding one person so they're not getting carried off. And we're trying to help that person stand back on the feet while the wave is just washing your feet and your clothes. And you're just standing there and holding their hands. Are you okay? Yeah, saying it's okay. That is allyship. Standing, holding each other's hands and making sure that you're there for them when they are going through something. And to me, that matters a lot, because I've had a lot of women, including folks from Ovationz like Sejal. They've all been there for me when I really needed help. And now I want to help people. Maybe it's not about who you are, or it's the underrepresented communities, but I've had lots of friends who are cisgender white male who have problems today. And to me, people are asking, why are you helping him? He's okay. He's a privileged man. To me, no, he lost his wife to cancer. He has to raise 2 kids. My heart is going out for him. companies need to rethink about diversity, about humanizing diversity, than just pushing into these little boxes of race, which is important, of course, but also
Yeah.
looking at. I wish there is a time, Aaron, where we don't talk about race, ethnicity, because it's all part of it, and then we are addressing some other issues. Like taxes. What do we do about taxes? What do we do
Yeah.
about environment? What do we do about that kind of an issue? There's a lot.
There's a lot. Like there's a lot to unpack here. I'm actually thinking I'm going to have you on again, honestly, because I have more thoughts to go with. I want to really, just because we're at time, I really want to sum up with
Sure.
something that is very congruent to what I teach as well. But I also pulled it from. I read it somewhere on one of your pages, so it's your words. But one of the things that I go into companies, I let them know that you need to work with people and within them. And they're like, what do you mean by within them? And I love the way you phrased it, in the sense that to be productive and profitable, you need to invest in the lives of your employees.
Yep.
And I think that's something that really needs to be thought of, and thought of again, and thought of again, and thought of again. Literally, not just come up with what it looks like today, but continue to come up with what it looks like today, and then the next today, and then tomorrow. You know what I mean? We need to continue to expand, because that's what's going to happen. Like when we hold, one of my mentors told me, hold everything tightly with an open hand. And that came up today, thinking about what we're talking about, where we continually need to be able to give and receive new information, give and receive compassion, give and receive understanding and kindness, and even knowledge, right? We need to be able to expand ourselves and whatnot. So let's leave it on you giving us just one final thought, if you could. If
Sure.
this was the last thing you could share, what would it be?
I wanted to expand on that word allies, ALLIES.
Yes, I like that, actually. Yeah, please.
Acknowledge your privilege, and L is to listen to the community. Another L is to learn to unlearn. I is to initiate and instigate tough conversations and decisions. E is to educate yourself and educate others. And S is to be supportive by being involved. I want to leave our audience with this. Even if you're single, if you're listening to this alone in your car or whenever, just keep this in your mind, because it's such a powerful allyship is such a powerful tool that changes here. I would say the world, and it can really change the corporate communities. It can definitely bring a change in the society as well. I think there's so much to unpack in this word ALLIES, and I want you to process it and implement it in your own way, in your everyday life. So just want to leave it at that.
Really, I think that is a perfect ending. Allyship and allies. Guys, I recommend you go back and re-listen to everything we talked about, with this ending final thought that she had around allies, and the acronym that she presented and whatnot. And I really think that's a guide, honestly, not only for our personal lives, but these corporations and organizations and leadership teams. So again, you've been on Insights with Ovationz. I'm Aaron Ellis. We've had the blessing and the privilege to speak with Celia Daniels today. Celia, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.